Success is the journey of 1,000 miles that begins with first step. Happy morning, dear students. I am Chitra Silvania, your zoology teacher, welcoming you all to this online class. As you step in your 11th standard, which plays a major factor in designing and determining your future. Have confidence, work hard. You are there to reach success. In zoology, we have two volumes. First volume, we are having 3 units which consists of 7 chapters. The first chapter is the living world.
Living world. All living forms coexist with each other. There are around 8.7 million species of animals which have been identified, named, described, and classified. A study report says that 86% of all species on the land and 91% of those in the seas are yet to be discovered and named. Though humans are placed on the top position in the hierarchy, they have to depend on plants and animals for food. That means humans are depending upon plants and animals for their food. Animals are used in many ways. They are used as a source of labor, in farming, as pets, and for other economic benefits. So this chapter deals with diversity in the living world and what is the need for classification and different types of classification, taxonomical hierarchy and nomenclature, that means naming of animals, and the taxonomical tools for studying these animals. First we see diversity in living world. Earth has numerous habitats with a wide range of living organisms inhabiting them. What is meant by habitat? Habitat is the place where the organism lives. Plants and animals are present in almost all the places, from polar ice caps to volcanic hot springs, from shallow lagoons to deepest oceans, from tropical rainforest to dry and parched deserts. There are a variety of species that have been adapted successfully to live in diverse, that means different ecosystem. Ecosystem. What is meant by ecosystem? Ecosystem is a community of living organisms, that means plants and animals, to the non-living environment including minerals, climate, soil, water, sunlight, etc. and their interrelationship. And this was given by A.G. Tansley in the year 1935. So what is ecosystem? Ecosystem means it's nothing but the interrelationship between living and non-living things. The presence of large number of species in a particular ecosystem is called as biological diversity. We can call it as biodiversity. The term biodiversity was first introduced by Walter Rosen in the year 1985 and it was defined by E.D. Wilson. First we see what is the difference between the living and the non-living things. So in your lower classes you might have studied about the difference between living and non-living things. Living things eat, living things move, living things reproduce, living things breathe, but non-living things do not. So likewise, living organism shows variety of unique characters different from the non-living matter. The key characters of a living organisms are cellular organization, how the body is present, whether it may be cellular type or tissue type or organ system type. Then nutrition, respiration, metabolism, growth, response to stimuli, movement, reproduction, excretion, adaptation, and homeostasis. So what is homeostasis? Maintaining an internal environment or internal body temperature, that is called as homeostasis. So what is the need for this classification? Is this very important? Why we have to classify animals? What is the need for it? For example, I will tell you, if you go for a supermarket, So you can see many shelves having rows and columns of grocery items, cosmetics, toys, stationery, snacks, utensils, etc. If it is not arranged in a well organized manner, what will happen? The customers and the salespersons will waste lots of time in finding an item. Likewise, I will give another example. If you go for a library, you can able to see the books are arranged or organized alphabetically according to our needs. Likewise, it is nearly impossible to study all living organisms. Hence, it becomes necessary to devise some means and methods to make this possible, and this process is called as classification. If you didn't classify the animals, we can't able to identify the animals. So classification means, or classification is defined as, it is a process by which the things are grouped in convenient categories based on easily observable characters. By their characters, we can group the organisms into different groups. So this is called classification. The scientific term used for these categories is taxa. What is taxa? Taxa is the scientific term used to categorize the animals based on the similarities and dissimilarities. So what is taxonomy? Science of classification. Classifying the animals is called as taxonomy. So characterization, identification, nomenclature, classification are the scientific stages that are basic to taxonomy. So what is the basic need for classification? Why we have to classify this? This question will be asked for your 3 marks. What is the need for basic classification? Classification is needed to identify and differentiate closely related species. Second one, to know the variation among the species. First, we can able to identify the closely related species, and then you can able to know the variation among the species. Third one is to understand the evolution of the species, how this animal is evolved, and to create a phylogenetic tree among different groups. Phylogenetic, that means evolutionary relationship between the organisms. That means the ancestral character. Last one is conveniently study about the living organisms. So we can able to study about the living organism in a convenient manner. So these are the basic need for classification. Next, we move on to taxonomy and systematics. What is taxonomy? If you divide the word taxonomy into taxis and normus, taxis means arrangement and normus means law. So taxonomy is the science of arrangement of living organisms along with classification, description, identification, and naming of an organisms, which includes all plants and animals, including microorganisms of the world. So taxonomy is nothing but it is arranged according to the norms or according to the laws. Okay, so this word taxonomy was coined by Augustin Primus de Candolle in the year 1813. Taxonomy is a theoretical study of classification with well-defined principles, rules, and procedures. Aristotle is called the father of taxonomy, that means classical taxonomy, and Carolus Linnaeus is the father of modern taxonomy. So 1 marks will be asked in this. Who is called the father of classical taxonomy? Who is called as the father of modern taxonomy? So next is the systematics. Systematics, from the word itself you can able to understand system, sequence. So the objectives of taxonomy and systematics are very similar. Taxonomy and systematics are both similar. Their goal is to classify organisms with stipulated rules. They use some rules to classify the organisms. The main criteria for the systematics is identifying, describing, naming, arranging, preserving, and documenting the organisms. You have to identify, you have to describe, you have to give the name, and you have to arrange it properly, you have to preserve it, and You have to document it, document writing in papers. So, apart from the above said features, the evolutionary history of the species is very, very important. So, Carolus Linnaeus, I said he is the father of modern taxonomy, which is the system of classifying and naming organisms. One of his contribution was the development of an hierarchical system of classification of nature. What is hierarchical system? This you might have studied in your lower classes. So phylum, kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, species. Yes. Today, this system includes 8 taxa, which consists of domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Next is history of classification. Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC, the Greek philosopher, is known as the father of zoology. He classified the animals in his book Historia Animalium. Aristotle made 2 main groups, anemia and anemia. Anemia, animals with no blood cells, and anemia, animals with red blood cells. Anemia was further divided into ovipara and vivipara. Next comes Theophagus in year 372 to 287 BC. Classified plants on the basis of form and texture. He divided them into trees, shrubs, undershrubs, and herbs. Theophagus gave names and description of 480 plants in his book Historia Plantarum. Then comes John Ray in year 1627 to 1705, was first to introduce and define the term animal species. He described more than 18,000 plants and animals in his Historia Generalis Plantarum and developed the key for identification of animals. The modern system of classification began in 1758 when Carolus Linnaeus published 10th edition of his book Systema Naturae in year 1707 to 1778. He also recognized that different species could be grouped into broader categories called taxon. There are some limitations in Aristotle's system of classification. We know Aristotle is the father of classical taxonomy, and he classified animals based on the presence or absence of RBC. So there is a limitation in Aristotle's system of classification. Example for that is the tadpoles of a frog. Tadpole is nothing but the larva of the frog is called as tadpole. So tadpoles of frogs are born in water and they have gills. But when they get metamorphized, that means when they grow into adult frog, they have lungs and can live both in land and water. They are amphibians. They can live in both land and water. So the larva lives in water and it have gills like fishes. But when it get matured, they have lungs and can live both in land and water. So how to classify frogs and where to place them? Aristotle classified organisms based on locomotion. So based on locomotion, he classified animals. Locomotion is nothing but movement. Hence, birds, bats, and flying insects were grouped together because all these birds, bats, and flying insects can fly, are grouped together just by observing one single characteristic, the flying ability. On the opposite side, okay, there are some flightless birds also. Ostrich, emu, penguin, they cannot fly. So Aristotle would not have classified them as birds. In spite of these limitations, Aristotle's classification was followed for more than 2000 years up to 1700. Aristotle to Linnaeus employed easily observable single to few characters for classification of organisms. With increased knowledge of the several biological domains, many characters were considered for classifying the organisms. A modification in this type of system is the numerical taxonomy. So you might have seen the classical taxonomy. From classical taxonomy, it is transformed into numerical taxonomy, which evolved in the year 1950. This system, numerical system, evaluates the resemblances, that means the similarities and differences, through statistical method, followed by computer analysis to establish the numerical degree of relationship among individuals. Later on, biologists initiated studies on evolutionary and genetic relationship. So first is the classical, second one is the numerical taxonomy, third one is the phylogenetic taxonomy. Based on the genetic relationship, phylogenetic classification is also called as cladistics. So cladistic classification summarizes the differences between genetic differences between all species in a phylogenetic tree. We can able to see the family tree, that is called the phylogenetic tree, from which ancestor we are formed. So Ernest Haeckel introduced the method of representing the evolutionary relationship with help of a tree diagram, which is known as cladogram. What is cladogram? Cladogram is nothing but it is a tree diagram representing the evolutionary relationship of an organism. This system of classification takes into account, so what are the characters that is taken by this phylogenetic system of classification? The ancestral characters and the derived characters. The ancestral characters we get from our ancestors, and the derived characters means that is formed. So one or more derived characters which appear during evolution resulted in the formation of new subspecies. If a new character is formed, so that helps in the formation of new subspecies. Arranging organisms on the basis of their similar or derived characters which differ from the ancestral character produced from a phylogenetic tree or cladogram. So depending on the system of classifications, organisms are classified into 2 or 3 kingdoms. Later on, it can be moved into 4, 5, 6, and now it is 7 kingdom. You know very well about the 5 kingdom classification of animals given by R.H. Whitaker in the year 1969. So the kingdoms of defined by him were Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and animals. So we will see the salient features of these 5 kingdom classification based on the cell type, cell wall, body organization, and mode of nutrition. We will see first 2, Monera and Protista first, and then fungi, plantae, and animals in the next. So the cell type in Monera is prokaryotic. What is meant by prokaryotes? Prokaryotes means the organisms which do not have a well-defined nucleus. And eukaryotes means karyo means nucleus. So eukaryotes means the organisms which have well-defined nucleus. And what about the cell wall? The Monera they are non-cellular. But in Protista, this cell wall is present in some animals. The body organization for both Monera and Protista are cellular type. Cells are present, not the tissues. And the mode of nutrition in Monera and Protista they are autotrophic and heterotrophic. They can prepare their own food. Some can depend upon other organisms for food. That is called heterotrophic. Then we move on to fungi, plantae, and animals. The cell type of these fungi, plants, and animals all are eukaryotic. The cell wall is present in fungi and plants, whereas in animals it is absent. In lower classes you study about that. And body organization, the fungi, it has a multicellular tissue type. The group of cells is called as tissues. So in fungi it is a multicellular tissue type, and in plants the tissue type and the organ types are formed because plants have roots, stems, leaves, etc. And in animals it formed into tissues, organs, and organ system. So tissues, organ, and organ system. The mode of nutrition in plants is autotrophic because they can prepare their own food. But fungi and animals, they are heterotrophic. So after this 5 kingdom classification, then comes the 6 kingdom classification, which includes bacteria, archaea, protista, fungi, plants, and animals. So in 1987, Cavalier-Smith revised the six kingdom classification into seven kingdom system. The concept of super kingdom was introduced and revised to seven kingdom classification. The seven kingdom classification includes Eubacteria, Arachibacteria, Protozoa, Chromista, fungi, plantae, and animals. Classification has come a long way and now takes into account even molecular level DNA and RNA identification. Molecular level is nothing but DNA and RNA. The advancement in molecular techniques and biochemical tests have led to a new classification, the three-domain classification. This question is a very important question, 5-mark question. So, the three-domain classification was proposed by Carl Oss in the year 1977 and by his co-workers. They classified organisms based on the difference in 16S rRNA genes. rRNA means ribosomal RNA. The three-domain system adds the taxon domain higher than the kingdom. Domain is higher than kingdom. This system emphasized the separation of prokaryotes into two domains, bacteria and archaea, and all eukaryotes are placed into the domain eukarya. The prokaryotes and eukaryotes are placed in three domains. Archaea appears to have more common with the eukarya than bacteria. So, archaea differ from bacteria in cell wall composition and differ from bacteria and eukaryotes in membrane composition and rRNA types. We will see the domains one by one. First is the domain archaea. This domain includes single cell organisms. The prokaryotes which have the ability to grow in extreme conditions like volcanoes, hot springs and polar ice caps, hence they are also called as extremophiles. What are extremophiles? The organisms or the prokaryotes which have the ability to grow in extreme condition. They can able to synthesize their own food without sunlight and oxygen by utilizing the hydrogen sulfide and other chemicals from the volcanoes. Some of them can produce methane, so they are called as methanogens. And few archaea can live in a salty condition. They are called as halophiles. And some can live in acidic as well as in high temperature. They are called as thermoacidophiles. So in domain archaea, they are single-celled organisms. They are extremophiles which can be able to live in extreme condition, and some can produce methane. They are called as methanogens. Some can live in salty environment called as halophiles, and some can thrive in acidic as well as in high temperature. They are called as thermoacidophiles. The second domain is the domain bacteria. Bacteria are prokaryotic. Their cell has no definite nucleus and DNA exists as a circular chromosome. Here, they do not have a well-defined nucleus, so the chromosome exists in a circular form. And they do not have any histones. Histone is nothing but the protein. They do not possess membrane-bound cell organelles except the ribosome, which is 70S type. There are so many cell organelles in the cytoplasm, which includes endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. So, this domain bacteria contains only ribosome 70S type. The cell wall contains peptidoglycans. And many bacteria are decomposers. They can decompose the organic substances. And some are photosynthesizers and few can cause diseases. Based on this bacteria can be divided into two types. One is probiotic, another one is the pathogenic bacteria. Probiotic bacteria is nothing but the beneficial bacteria. Example for this is lactobacillus. curd is one of the best source of probiotic bacteria, which is a friendly bacteria that can improve our health. This lactobacillus is helpful to convert milk into curd. So it is a beneficial probiotic. And some can cause diseases, salmonella, like that. So they are the pathogenic bacteria which are diversely populated in the living organisms. Cyanobacteria, photosynthetic blue-green algae which can produce oxygen. These have played a key role in the changes of atmospheric oxygen level from anaerobic to aerobic during the early periods. Next one, the third domain is eukarya or eukaryotes. Eukaryotes are animals which have true nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. DNA in the nucleus is arranged as a linear chromosome with histone proteins. Linear means straight. They have histone proteins. So the difference between bacteria and eukarya. So if a question is asked like this, like the difference between the domain bacteria and eukarya, you can write bacteria is prokaryote and eukarya is eukaryotes. Here they do not have well-defined nucleus, and in eukarya they have well-defined nucleus and membrane-bound cell organelles. And here the DNA is in circular chromosome. Here the DNA is a linear chromosome. They do not have histones in bacteria, but in eukarya they have histone proteins. So the ribosome of eukarya is 80S type, whereas in bacteria it is 70S type. So animals in this domain are classified under kingdom, namely Protista, fungi, plantae and animals. There is another bacterium called Thermus aquaticus which can tolerate high temperature. Thermus aquaticus. The first DNA polymerase enzyme was isolated from this Thermus aquaticus and it is used in PCR. PCR is nothing but polymerase chain reaction. You will study this PCR in your 12th standard. So what is the role of this DNA polymerase enzyme? So this DNA polymerase enzyme helps in DNA amplification. So Thermus aquaticus is a bacterium which can produce the DNA polymerase enzyme which is useful for PCR. PCR is polymerase chain reaction. Students, I hope you all have understood the concepts taught today. Book link is sent to you. You open up the link and study the portion taught today. Have a pen and notebook with you and write the names of the biologists that we come across in today's class. If you have any doubt, feel free to ask me. I am ready to clear your doubts. Study then and there so that you can enrich your mind with the lesson. Stay safe at home. Thank you.